when you think of Alaska? It's pretty. What do you think of? It's big. Yeah, those are both absolutely accurate. It is the biggest state in the nation. And I mean, just look at that. That's Juneau. That's downtown Juneau right there. Is absolutely gorgeous. What we're going to do here today, I've got a couple of things to go through, and we're going to do some background on some Indigenous folks, and then we'll move on. I want to talk about why we're doing this community connections trip. And so the tenets of our faith are to seek justice, love kindness, and walk humbly. And part of being humble is to recognize that we're not the center of the universe, right? And so Native Alaskans have always been the recipient of injustices from countless decades. And by us going to them, we get a glimpse of walking in their shoes and help us be better agents of justice in our own life by decentralizing ourselves and learning about how other people live. We are intentionally not calling this a mission trip. This is a community connections trip because of the stuff that's happened with mission. Mission is a sort of a dirty word for Native cultures. The mission schools that have happened, there's been a lot of abuse and scandals and injustices that have come from missionaries who have been colonizers. So we're trying to move away from the missionary word. We're calling it a community connections trip so that we can connect with those communities and serve and grow within our own faith. I'm going to give you a little cultural background. We're going to talk about the Alaskan landscape, and then we're going to talk about ways to bring in the wider community and have a quick Q&A as well. Alaska's indigenous people are jointly called Alaskan Natives. They share 20 different languages. And so there's Alaska. That's every shade of different color there is a different language that's spoken in Alaska. They're kind of divided into 5 major groups. The Aleuts that you see down there on the bottom that are in the Aleutian Islands that extend off to the east, or I'm sorry, to the west. The Northern Eskimos, or the Inuits, who are up in the north there. The Southern Eskimos, or the Utes. The interior Indians, the Athabascans, and then the southeast coastal Indians, the Tlingit and the Haida, down there in the bottom right. Fun fact, the northernmost city in America is a little town that used to be called Barrow, Alaska, and is right around here, right there. Little town right there called Barrow that is now called Ukivakik, which was renamed in 2016 when the town decided to return to its native ancestral name. So they're no longer calling it Barrow, it's now Ukiagvik. There's a local referendum that changed the name. So what we're gonna do though is focus on the Haida Nation and the Tlingit Nation. These are the folks who live down here in Juneau area. This whole strip, the Tlingit and the Haida. So one of the things that we talked about in confirmation is the difference between truth and myth, right? We've just talked about this recently. I don't know if you remember when we talked about the difference between truth and myth. Cool. What are some of the Christian myths that we have about creation? What was there? Yes? Darkness and void across the face of the earth, right? And then what did God do for a Christian myth? Brought light, right? Brought light to the world, separated it into day and night, and then through a series of other things brought on life as we know it. Then all that life was destroyed by a giant flood, right? Big flood, and then there's the Noah story, and then we have God returning to the world and returning life through a rainbow. Those are the Christian myths about creation. And these are just the different areas. You can see it's broken up into a lot of different areas. So I have for you a Tlingit myth about creation. This is how ravens stole the sun. Just to give you a sense of the ancestral heritage.
How Raven Stole the Sun. Story by Maria Williams. Illustrations by Felix Vigil. A long time ago, Raven, or Yael, was pure white from the tips of his claws to the ends of his wings. He was very striking, like fresh snow in winter. This was so long ago that there were no stars, no moon, and no sun. People lived in total darkness, and their only light was from campfires. Raven was concerned about this. The stars, moon, and sun were kept in large, beautifully carved boxes in a chief's house. The chief was greedy and didn't want to share these wonders with anybody, not even his wife or daughter. Raven knew the chief kept the celestial lights all to himself and began plotting how he could take them away. Raven tried to get into the chief's big house, but was always caught before he could enter. Finally, he came up with a brilliant scheme for stealing the stars, moon, and sun. The chief's daughter was a lovely young woman, and the chief knew that soon she should be ready to have children of her own. This made him happy because he wanted grandchildren very badly, especially a grandson. One day, the daughter was gathering berries and got very thirsty. She found a nice creek flowing with fresh, cool water. Raven quietly followed her, and as she began to scoop up water with her cup, he quickly transformed himself into a small pine needle. Raven drifted into her cup, and the young woman swallowed him. Several months later, the chief's daughter gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. But what the chief and his family didn't know was that the baby was Raven. The chief was very happy and proud. He had always wanted a grandson. The baby cried a lot, but the chief was very patient. One day, the chief noticed the baby was pointing to the box with the stars in it. He cried and cried for it. Finally, the chief got the box of stars down to let his grandson play with it. Raven smiled and played with the box, and when the chief was not looking, Raven opened it. The stars flew out and up into the sky. Grandfather was not pleased to lose his stars to the sky, but his grandson was happy for a little while, and this made him happy. But eventually Raven began to cry again. He cried and pointed to the box containing the moon. The chief remembered what happened the last time, but couldn't stand to see his grandson cry. So he handed him the box with the moon in it. The grandson smiled and played with the box. When the chief looked away, Raven opened the lid. The moon flew out and up into the sky. Raven loved making mischief, but he was growing tired of being a baby. He wanted to be a raven again. He missed his glorious feathers. He missed flying through the air, and he was getting really tired of the chief. But Raven waited because he was so curious about what was in the last box, the biggest box, the most beautiful of the 3 boxes. And so he began to cry. He cried and cried for days. The chief remembered what had happened with the moon and the stars, but he was sad to see his grandson crying. So he handed him the last box, the box containing the sun. Of course, the cunning raven was waiting for this moment. He opened the lid and freed the sun. What a beautiful sight! The sun flew out and up into the sky, and daylight came into the people's lives. Raven was very happy, and now that his curiosity was satisfied, he changed back into a raven. The chief saw the transformation and became very angry. He had been tricked. The chief closed the door to the house and trapped Raven inside. Raven knew the chief was bigger and stronger and would probably kill him. He flew around, frantically trying to find a way out. Finally, he spied a very small smoke hole in the ceiling. He flew up to it and squeezed through, and as he did, the black soot coated his feathers. Raven joyfully burst out into the light of day. Raven was very surprised to see that he was now completely black. From the tip of his claws to the end of his wings, every feather and even his beak were a beautiful shiny black. This was how Raven came to be black, as he remains to this day.
So that's the story of how Raven stole the sun. There's a lot of different dynamics at play. You also see a strong connection to the animal world. I mean, Raven having these strong powers, being the central character is a big focus. Certainly, animals are paramount to the native peoples of Alaska. The raven is one of the big ones. As you see, Raven, bringing the light of the world to it. I have another story. Now, that's a Tlingit story. I have another story that I want to show you, but this is from the Haida tradition. It's a little bit shorter. Let's see if we can skip to that one now. Raven and the First Men.
There was a time before the first humans when water covered the earth. Over an endless expanse of sea flew Raven, bored and lonely, until finally the waters began to recede. Supernatural beings were already upon the first reefs to emerge. The newly formed islands soon became home to many creatures, natural as well as supernatural. It was a time when anything was possible. Boundaries of earth, sky, and sea were made non-existent. All beings were able to pass from one domain to another through miraculous powers of transformation. Generous forests carpeted the land, providing shelter and food for many different animals. Birds filled the skies, whales and fish swam the seas. Raven, through cleverness, trickery, and even outright theft, traveled about changing things to his liking. He brought fresh water to the islands. He even stole the sun to provide light for the world. But now he was bored and restless. Things had become too settled. He craved mischief and set out for more adventure. After gorging himself on the beach at Naikun one day, he noticed a large shell half buried amongst the kelp, and unlike any others, strange sounds came from inside. Upon closer examination, he saw the shell was full of tiny creatures hiding in terror. Fortunately for these creatures, Raven was no longer hungry, so instead of shoveling them down his throat, he used his most tantalizing voice to coax them out into his new and wonderful world. They began to emerge. A few ran timidly back in, but eventually Raven persuaded them all to come out. He had discovered the first humans, the Haida. With Raven's help, the Haida and their descendants lived well on these generous islands. Great legends were born of both man and beast. They grew and prospered, skillfully falling into the rhythm of the seasons as nature had intended, never forgetting that they were just one small part of the immense circle of life. These islands of the Haida had truly become Haida Gwaii.
What similarities did you see between these stories and creation stories of our own? Something bringing light? Yeah. The thing started in darkness and then something brought light. Sure. What about the second one? Any similarities there? People? How so? The creation of people, that there was the water covered the face of the earth and then people came after that. Yeah, absolutely. So these stories are held by the people very similarly like how we hold our own biblical stories, right? Which is very dear and close to our heart as like the founding principle on all things, right? Oh, please, come on, come on. We can be real here. Y'all don't believe that Noah lived, and y'all don't believe that God made the universe in 7 days. Like, come on, we can be real with each other here. And what I'm saying is that that's the same for most native people these days, is they don't really believe that Raven got grandfather to open up a box and out came the sun. That's just one of their cultural stories that that gives them, it's one of these native stories that they've heard for years, and there's these symbols everywhere. You'll see raven as a strong, powerful symbol used throughout native art. Recognizing that not so much that like a legitimate raven opened a box and put out the sun, but that the powers of chaos are everywhere and powerful and dictate and change things, that the power of change is constant and is regular. Here we see some traditional use. These are native people in many native canoes. They, let me go back. The Tlingit people and the Haida people are born into their identity through a matrilineal clan. So like their mother's side has their clan. That's like where their clans are made up, is based on their mother's side. Whereas here in America, it's mostly the father's side. Like you take, like when women get married to men, oftentimes that they will take the man's name. Tlingit society is the other way around. It's matriarchal. The Haida and the Tlingit clans are organized into two major moieties. There's a word for you, moiety. You know, say it with me, moiety. It's a fun word, right? Moiety. A moiety is something that is united but has two distinct parts. And so the major moieties are the raven or the eagle. Those are the two moieties, the two different clan sections of these native peoples. You're either a raven or an eagle. And that is like the team that your clan is a part of. An eagle or wolf. It's interesting to see that both eagle and wolf are interchangeable. I'm giving you some background on the native people so you can kind of have a basic understanding of the people that we would be going to serve and the cultures that we're walking into. Traditionally, they use land and water as marines and fishermen. They take pride in being able to use all the resources of the land. They still follow ancient laws that their people are the foundational tribal sovereignty. So when Alaska became a province of the United States, they recognize that the United States is moving into their territory, that they are the Haida people, the Haida nation, the Tlingit nation. But the United States has still claimed all the land. And so they are now living within land that has been claimed away from them. The Tlingits and the Haidas are enrolled citizens in the Central Council of Tlingit and Haida Indian Tribes of Alaska. They affirm their inherent sovereignty, and they say that they will never be alienated from that sovereignty. They perpetuate and preserve the traditions to ensure the future generations inherit their rightful heritage as Tlingit and Haida people. This is something that has been taken away from them, right? Colonizers from the United States have tried to take away native rights. It used to be illegal in Alaska for them to sing their native songs, to dance their tribal dances. Those were made illegal for a number of years. It's now legal, which is great, but you go a couple generations with it being illegal and a lot gets forgotten. which is exactly what the colonizers wanted. There's some other points about Alaska. Oh, there's some native salmon fishing, smoking and drying of the salmon leaves. These are the totems, as I was talking about, with all the different tribal affiliations, either eagle or raven, and then the different moieties within. Every tribal clan is dedicated to either an eagle or a raven, but then each tribal house has its own totem moiety attached to it. So you might see like you might be a raven frog, or a raven whale, or eagle frog. And so you have these sort of overarching clan names, but then these individual totems that have their own specific meaning, all of its own individual artwork. That is, what's that mountain? Anyone know what that mountain is? Guesses? It's the tallest mountain in America. That's Denali right there. That is Denali, also known as Mount McKinley. You ever heard of Mount McKinley? Have you ever heard of Denali? No? Oh my goodness. So Mount McKinley, let me tell you a little bit about this. Of the 20 highest peaks in the United States, 17 of them are in Alaska. Denali is the highest peak in North America. That is 20,000 feet above sea level. Denali is the Native American name for the peak, and it means the Great One. The United States purchased Alaska from Russia in 1867, and a couple of decades later, a gold prospector named Frank Densmore explored the interior of Alaska and just loved this tremendous mountain. He just kept going on and on about it. So prospectors all along the Yukon River began calling this mountain Densmore's Mountain, or Densmore Peak. Then one prospector named William Dickey really liked President-elect McKinley. And so he started calling this Mount McKinley. And then in an 1897 New York Sun article, he started calling it Mount McKinley. And so then, even though President McKinley never had any associations with Alaska, everyone started calling it Mount McKinley. It was especially popularized following McKinley's assassination in 1901. And the name stuck for almost 100 years, for over 100 years. In 2016, so just 6 years ago, efforts to change the name back to its original name prevailed, and now it is no longer now known as Mount McKinley. It is just called Denali again. And the park, the national park around it, is now recognized as Denali National Park. So that's Denali. If anyone asks you about Mount McKinley, now you can let them know it's actually called Denali. Water bodies, the Yukon River, I mentioned that. It's almost 2,000 miles long. See that right there? That's that blue line. It's the third longest river in the US, and there are more than 3,000 rivers in Alaska and over 3 million lakes in Alaska. We're the land of 10,000 lakes, right? They have 3 million lakes in Alaska. The largest lake, Liliama, encompasses over 1,000 square miles. Glaciers. Alaska has an estimated 100,000 glaciers, ranging from tiny little glaciers to huge valley glaciers like this one. This one is called Mendenhall Glacier and is going to be on our trip. I'm going to talk a little bit about scheduling a little later, and this is one that you can drive to. You can see some people right down there to get a sense of scale for how big this glacier is. 5% of the state, or 29,000 square miles, are covered by glaciers. Just one of my favorite lines. Western cultures believe we must be alive for a purpose, to work, to make money. Some indigenous cultures believe we're alive just as nature is alive, to be here, to be beautiful and strange. We don't need to achieve anything to be valid in our humanness. This is taken in Alaska. That is a humpback whale breaching. I hope that some of this was shown through those stories that were read. The pacing of it was, I would guess, slower than most of the media that we've seen. Is that fair, that the pacing of it was pretty slow? Some of that, and you'll see and will feel on this trip, is that there's going to be less of a sense that time is money and more of a sense that we are just here. We are here and we get to witness and we get to be. One of the blessings of this trip, what I'm considering to be a Sabbath trip, is a time away from the everydayness of our life, where we must be alive for a purpose, to work and to make money. But we can be alive just to be alive like nature is alive, to be witness, to see the beautiful and strange within ourselves and within the world around us. Before we get to that, a couple other points. Alaska has the most northern point and the most eastern point in the United States. Its coastline, it has 6,600 miles of coastline and 33,900 miles of shoreline. The California coastline, by comparison, is 840 miles. 840 miles is California. Alaska has 6,600 miles of coastline. You can pretty much plop it right down in the United States. It's the entire size of the United States, of the continental United States. Some misconceptions about Alaska. The most common ones are bad weather, bad road conditions, and high prices. But over a third of vacation pleasure visitors found the weather to be better than expected. You've seen some of these pictures that I've sent. This is probably what it's going to look like in the summer when we're there. It's going to be gorgeous. It's going to be between the 60s and the 80s, generally. It might rain. It might rain a lot, because it rains a lot. It's the Pacific Northwest. Think Seattle, but a little bit farther north. It's going to rain a lot. But when it's not raining, it's absolutely gorgeous in the summer. Almost the entire length of the Alaska highway is asphalt surfaced, and the roads are part of the state's highway system. They're all paved. The road systems are great. When there are roads, Juneau you can only fly into or take boat. There's no road that you can drive to Juneau because it's surrounded by glaciers. So you can either fly in or take a boat in. And then you can go out the road to see the glacier, and then you come back in the road to town. But it's a very nice road. And then high prices, you know, it's really not that bad. It's really not. You're going to pay about the same for hotel accommodations that you would in any major city in Alaska. Food prices, especially for like organic or produce prices, are going to be a little bit higher than you would, and you can't find everything as often as you can here in the city or here in the continental United States, but they do just fine without it. It's a different way of life. That's all it is. So that is what we got. A little bit about the logistics of the trip. This is Aldersgate UMC. It's a United Methodist church that is in the northern side of Juneau. This trip, I am working in partnership with the pastor here at Aldersgate UMC, Pastor Christie, and they have this outdoor area over here that you can't see. It's behind these trees. Right across the street from here, where we are, there is a low-income housing. There's a low-income housing complex right across the street from them, and they have been wanting to revitalize their outdoor spaces because there really aren't any safe public spaces around. And so when there aren't safe public spaces around, do you know what happens to communities, low-income communities, when there aren't safe public gathering spaces? Drug use goes up and violence goes up and gang rates go up because there aren't safe places for young people to gather and be in community and grow and develop and have study halls and things. And so they turn to gangs, or they turn to drugs. They turn to unsafe living practices. And so what Aldersgate wants to do is they want to transform their outdoor space into a community space so that this low-income housing that's across the way, people will have a gathering space to have barbecues, have community gatherings, have community picnics. So some of the time that we're here, staying at Aldersgate, we would be working on their outdoor space to help them convert and create this outdoor communal space. Because in Alaska, outdoor spaces have always been and always will be prime spaces. because the weather is gorgeous in the summer. And when it's light out, everybody wants to be outside because 6 months out of the year, it is dark, like dark, dark. In the winter, it does not get sunny. It is just dark all the time. And so in the summer, it's light all the time. Like when we go, we'll go to bed at 10 o'clock at night and it'll be like this out there. Like this much light at 10 o'clock at night is what it's going to be like. It's wild experience. It's kind of hard to get used to when it's like this light when you go to sleep and then this light when you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. But everyone likes to be outside. So we would be spending some of our time working on this community space. Then other times would be spent doing cultural immersion work. So there is a community center, a Native community center in Juneau that we would go on. There is a walking tour of downtown Juneau that I would like to take. There are, I'm in contact with HOODIES, which is a Presbyterian church in Alaska. They used to be called Northern Light, and they recently, 2016 was a big year for changing names. They changed their name to HOODIES, which is the Native name for the church. And they have lots of Native elders at that church. I'm lucky because my father-in-law served that church for 5 years. And so I have connections there, and I'm leveraging those connections to talk to the Native elders of Juneau to come and talk to us about their culture, about what it means to be Native in the modern world. Because living the traditional Native life is not an option. Colonizers have destroyed that. So how do you be true to your Native roots and yet live in the modern world? We're going to hear a lot about how they do that. There are Christians who are Native, and how do they reconcile their traditional Native faith with the Christian faith? And why do they feel that that is a meaningful title to claim? Why do they feel like being part of the Christian faith is meaningful to them? We'll hear from a lot of different Native elders. That'll be sort of the other half of the day. The day will be split up into work days and then cultural immersion days. And then we'll have communal meals that we'll be preparing here at Aldersgate UMC, or we'll probably be eating out some too. There's some amazing seafood that we will definitely be trying. I hope you like seafood. Do you like seafood? Fan of seafood? Yeah, good. Good. Well, you'll see king crab that it's so big, fresh, pulled out of the water. It's amazing. We'll go down to the docks and see the Native boats coming in, the fishing that it gets done. The pier has lots of Native goods and wares. So we'll see some of the Native artwork. God, y'all will be blown away by how many bald eagles you're going to see on this trip. Like, it's cool. Like, so I've been to Alaska. Cards on the table. I've been to Alaska, and you get there and you see bald eagles, and it's like, that's really cool. It's a bald eagle. Wow. And then 3 days in, it's like, that's like the 35th bald eagle I've seen. I'm kind of over it. It's kind of wild. But there's so many bald eagles. It's amazing. And ravens. You'll see eagles and ravens all over the place. And these are big, black, honking ravens that are just everywhere, that are super smart, that you don't want, that will get mad at you and remember your face. So be nice to the ravens. There are reasons why they talk about ravens in these stories. They're not just some distant figure. They are very present in their lives still. Ravens and eagles are everywhere in Alaska, not just in the cultural artwork. So that is the nutshell. That is a nutshell of what the culture looks like and what the trip will look like. We want to do some wider community engagement work as well, so that the community is bought in. Our wider here church community, the St. Luke community, is bought into it, so that they, this is not going to be a super cheap trip, but it's not going to be the most expensive trip either. I'm dedicated. I know I'm going to keep it under $2,000. It'll probably be more like $1,500 per person to go on this, and that's all inclusive of airfare, travel, food, experiences. That the only thing that doesn't account for is souvenir money. So if you want to buy some souvenirs, and I recommend bring $50 for souvenirs, because there's a lot of cool stuff. The artwork is amazing. And so if we can get our community engaged in this, then they will be eager. They are going to be so hungry to support youth going to Alaska, to broaden their perspectives, to do important community service and care work, things that aren't just like paint a wall a nicer color, but like really transforming space to serve the low-income community of Northern Juneau. Fundraising. You know, this church is really hungry for a spaghetti dinner. The spaghetti dinner fundraisers are a thing that this congregation has done and loved in the past. We haven't done it for like 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. I don't know. It's been a long time. They would love to do a spaghetti dinner sometime, you know, in like May, April. We could include a silent auction in that. And then then we're not totally paying out of pocket for this trip ourselves, but having the wider community support it. I love to do a thing where we have like, your families pitch in some money. Maybe you can raise some money through other connections that you have through wider families, grandparents or family members, uncles, aunts who are interested in supporting you in something, a major trip like this, and then have our community as well chip in. I know that we have scholarships available for everyone. So if you need a scholarship, there is scholarship money available, absolutely. And we'll talk more details of that probably in the new year. Last, logistics. I don't need any sort of down payment until about February. So you have plenty of time to think this over and to see if this is going to be a reasonable thing for you. But then I will need some down payments so that we can book tickets come February. And then final costs would be due June 1st. We're looking to travel in the middle of July. And that's my whole presentation. What questions do you have? How long is the trip? Great question. We would probably travel out on a Saturday, spend most of the day traveling, maybe have a layover in Seattle, maybe not, and then get in probably Saturday night-ish or late afternoon, get our bearings, get some food, maybe go on a hike, and then get settled. And then we'd have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and probably leave Friday. So we're looking at about a week. Great question. How long is a flight to Alaska? The flight itself, if you go straight from here to Juneau, you're looking at probably 5 hours, 5 to 6 hours. If there is a layover, it might be longer, depending on how long the layover is, right? Maybe even 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours. It's kind of weird though, because there's a big time change that happens. So jet lag is absolutely a thing that's going to feel weird. We're going to get there and it's going to be like, how is it only 4 o'clock? I feel like I've been traveling all day. And it's going to be bright out. So it's going to feel weird, but it's going to be super fun. Other questions? I will have a packing list that is coming that will say things like a good pair of shoes, like a good pair of trail runners, because we will be walking a lot. There is a van that I'm working with Pastor Christie to solidify to help us get around places, like when we go out to Denali, see the glacier and stuff. But Juneau is a walking town, and there's a walking tour that we would go on. So we're going to be doing a lot of walking. You're going to get your steps in for sure. So a good pair of shoes will save your life. A sleeping pad will be another encouraged thing to bring, like an inflatable sleeping pad, a little camping pad, because we are going to be on the floor of the church. It's going to be super fun. It's going to be a little camp out, be super fun. But we are going to be sleeping on the floor. Now, they might have, pews that are with like pads and stuff, but I just bring a camping pad. They're easy. They deflate. They're cheap. You can throw them in a backpack. And it makes a world of difference when you're sleeping on the floor for a week. How close is that to downtown Juneau? It is, so Juneau itself is split into 2 different areas. There is the airport is kind of right in the middle of it. You land at the airport and it's right on the water. And then if you go to the left out of the airport, you go to North Juneau. If you go to the right, you go to downtown Juneau. And from the airport to downtown Juneau, it's probably 10 minutes driving. If you go left to North Juneau to like the church, it's like 5 to 10 minutes as well. So from the church to downtown, 15, 20 minutes. Yeah, driving. And we would drive. So we would drive from the church and then park somewhere in around the downtown or on the Verge area. And then we would just be walking around the downtown area and the downtown area has the cultural center, the wharf, the docks, the pier, the Alaskan fishing company. You get some smoked salmon to bring home and everyone will love you. There's a tram with a cultural center that's overlooking the bay and a native eagle preserve. There's the governor's mansion with the totems. There's Totem Park. There's a lot just right there in downtown Juneau. And then we also potentially go see Douglas Island, which is an island that's right across the bay from Juneau. If you have other questions, you can ask me anytime. Y'all have my cell number. You can text me, you can ask me. Right now I have 4 confirmed reserved to go on this trip. And yeah, I'm looking to grow that. So if you have friends who are interested in going to Alaska, bring them along, let them know. We got room. I'm probably going to cap this trip at 12. I don't think I'd want to take more than 12 people to Alaska, but right now I got 4 people signed up. So you got a friend that you want to bring to Alaska, bring them along. Be in touch with me. Have them fill out the registration form online. Fill out the registration form online yourself if you haven't already done so. And that's how you're going to stay involved. For now, the next time I would like to get the crew together to talk is probably in February. I think that the beginning of February is probably a good time to reconnect and really focus on drumming up support. We'll focus on doing some group building and some fundraising plans, as well as some finalizations of plans for the trip and the details that'll come. So I'm going to be sending emails to y'all with information as it comes in the next few months, and then look forward to that first Sunday in February, getting back together to do some mission trip building and some fundraiser coordination planning. Oh, also, we're going to have t-shirts. So we all are going to get a t-shirt. I might even do hoodies. Maybe I should do hoodies. Should I just do hoodies? Hoodies or t-shirts? What do you think? You think hoodies? What would you vote? Hoodies? Tess, what would you vote? Hoodies or t-shirts?
Hoodies.
All right, cool. Let's get a hoodie. I like a good hoodie, right? A nice hoodie, like a once in a lifetime kind of trip, deserves a hoodie, not a t-shirt that you're going to wear once and then like get rid of, right? Yeah, cool. Well, then I'm going to look into getting us some hoodies, probably with some piece of native Alaskan art on it, as well as our name. Probably be, I'm thinking like fluorescent green as a color. Yeah, like a neon green. What do you think? What color should it be if it's not neon green? A less bright green? Kind of like a nice forest green? Okay, okay, cool. What do you think, Tess? You want to weigh in on color?
I agree with the less bright green.
Less bright green. Okay, cool, 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 cool. All right, well, cool. Like I said, this is a thing that we are all doing and building together. So I want to make sure that you all have buy-in on it. And so a nice hoodie, nice forest green hoodie. Yeah, that could be pretty slick. All right, I like the sound of that. Ooh, maybe with like a, do we want like, what should the accent color be? Like a darker accent color or like a brighter accent color, like a white or maybe like a red, white. Okay, okay, cool. I'll draft some stuff up. We'll draft some stuff up. We'll see what comes of that. That'll be super fun. Yay, I'm excited. I hope y'all are interested or excited about this. I'm sure getting excited about this. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I am gonna take the next steps. If there's anything else, I know we were scheduled here to go till 5, but with a smallish group, we got through the information quick. So if there's nothing else, may God be with you. It's good to see you. Oh, thank you. God bless you. See, this is why you're a senior, Isaiah. You know the rhythms. I appreciate you. It's so good to see you again. Well, thanks. Thanks, Tess. Thanks for sticking with us.